Welkom terug. Nou, dit is tyd vir 'n baie interessante onderhoud wat ons het. Ons praat met professor Bruce Cairncross. Nou, hy is professor in geologie aan die Universiteit van Witwatersrand. En hy kuier vanoggend hier om te praat oor sy visuele boek Minerals and Gemstones of Southern Africa. En vanoggend praat ons ook natuurlik watter edelstene en minerale spesifiek kry ons hier in Suid-Afrika. Good morning, professor.
Good morning, and how are you? And maybe just one small correction, because I know my colleagues won't like it. I'm at the University of Johannesburg.
Of course. Let's just not make that. Yes, that's very important.
Yeah,
Such an honor to speak to you this morning. I have to read this. Professor Cairncross, you have been awarded the Geological Society of South Africa's Presidential Award in 2009 for service rendered to the Johannesburg Geological Museum and Southern Africa Mineral Heritage. In 2020, you were honored with the Geological Society of South Africa's highest accolade, the Draper Medal, for lifetime achievements and contribution to Southern Africa geoheritage and tertiary education. You have written 12 books on Southern African minerals and gemstones, authored and co-authored 244 articles, and presented over 100 public lectures. And now your latest one is out, Minerals and Gemstones of Southern Africa. What an accomplishment. That is like a complete mouthful. So I do need to know, where did this love for geology start?
No, thanks a lot for that introduction. I think my CV is a reflection of my age. I think my interest started as maybe a lot of people who are not geologists or experts, let's say. I think if you're out in the field, if you're hiking in the mountains or in the bush somewhere, you see an interesting or a colorful rock on the ground and you pick it up and you take it home and you stick it on your bookshelf. And in that way, you start an interest in what may end up being actually geology. And for me, I grew up in the platteland in a town called Standerton, through which the Vaal River flows. And along the banks of that river, you find beautiful colored stones, including agates, which are it's a type of quartz with beautiful rings in it. And so at a very early age, I was picking up these things, in the field. But as a geologist, actually, my area of speciality is, in fact, that is an agate. That's exactly what we used to pick up. My area of interest or speciality is really, I'm actually a coal geologist, but my interest in minerals began when I worked as a second-year student in a holiday job in what was then Southwest Africa. And the geologist who was at the camp at the time, he collected minerals. And by that I mean, he actually bought minerals in shops, beautiful, colorful species. And he got me interested. And when I returned to the university to continue my studies, I started to read up more about them. And in that way, I actually built up my interest. And I've been collecting now for 47 years, I think it is. And my collection is quite large. And my wife wishes I'd rather collected stamps.
Prof, I just want to ask you, as a professor, as a lecturer, what is the interest like of the youth in careers in geology at the moment? Has there been an increase?
You know, that's a very good question. And all of the universities, the geology departments actually think about this, because usually when there's a boom in the economy, in other words, there is a need for commodities like iron or coal or manganese or gold, then there's a great demand for graduate geologists. And when there's a recession, then a lot of geologists are out of work. And quite often, when the geology departments are producing our graduates, it's not in phase with the economy. So usually when the companies are trying to find new young geologists, they're not always available. So it's a bit of a fluctuating, like a graph, if you would like to say. But there is always a need for qualified geologists, not only in South Africa, but a lot of the companies, as you probably know, actually work elsewhere in West Africa and even overseas. So the student numbers do actually fluctuate.
Professor, this might be a silly question, but you've worked in the field as a geologist and also as a lecturer at university. What does the job of a geologist entail? Is it fieldwork every day? Is it more in front of the computer, research? Maybe just create a bit of a picture of what the job of a geologist entails.
A geologist must be able to multifunction. And it all depends on the kind of work that you get, because some geologists may be in the field with exploration. In other words, they may be somewhere in the bush with their company trying to find new deposits of gold or whatever they are exploring for. So they are basically the field geologists. Then there are geologists or mineralogists who would work in the lab, and they would be people who would get samples from the geologists who are working in the field to analyze and to then see if they are finding the right kind of rock that the company is actually, in fact, exploring for. A lot of geologists nowadays work in the environmental sector. You know, after you've mined out a commodity, especially if it's a big open cast mine or a quarry, you've got to rehabilitate it. You know, you have to put the land back to as it was before you started mining. And so some geologists actually specialize with postgraduate work in environmental rehabilitation. And then a small number of geologists like me, for example, become academics. And in order to actually teach, you need to, these days, at least have a doctorate in geology. So yes, and obviously there are geologists who do both. You may be in the field, then you come back into the mine or to the office and do your work behind your computer. So it's multitasking.
Wow, that's fascinating. Professor, you were saying you've been collecting, or your collection, over 40 years. Why do people collect minerals?
Look, I think collecting can be in a person's blood, you know, and whether it's these minerals or stamps or coins or Persian carpets or PNF paintings, once the collecting bug bites, it's hard to escape. But I think the thing about minerals is that, as I said before, you can find them, depending where you are, lying out in the field, in the veld, and you can just actually pick them up. So I think one of the things is it's easy access, but also there is a beauty to minerals. They are often very colorful, and they have very interesting shapes. And also, not just in South Africa, but around the world, there are a lot of amateur societies and clubs that encourage you to actually collect. But if you look at collecting minerals, it's a bit different because basically minerals are a non-renewable heritage. You know, if you're talking about a mine and they are mining somewhere and they are producing these minerals, when the mine is closed, they are gone forever. Sure. So they are non-renewable. Some people collect purely for the beauty. There's a scientific value. People may collect minerals, or geologists, or in fact amateurs, because you can learn a lot about how a certain deposit formed. You know, why do we have this kind of mineral here? What elements has it got? And then even amongst the amateurs, you know, it's basically a social interaction. A lot of the clubs would have these outings to collect, and you go out together, and it's a social thing. The serious collectors, when I say serious, I guess everyone is actually serious, actually buy minerals, because there are a lot of shows internationally, gem and mineral shows that you can go to, where you'll see dealers who've got stock.
That's really, really fascinating. And I think we will definitely get to specifically minerals in Southern Africa and why we find them just after this. Bly gerus ingeskakel. Nou, ons gaan voort met ons gesprek met professor Bruce Cairncross. Hy's 'n professor aan die Universiteit van Johannesburg in geologie en hy het hierdie boek geskryf, Minerals and Gemstones of Southern Africa. En is eintlik 'n bitter mooi boek, vreeslik die mooiste prentjies ook hier. En as jy daarna kyk, dis regtig pragtig om te sien en is baie interessant ook om te leer oor minerale en edelstene. Now, Professor, I do want to ask you, why is Southern Africa and South Africa so well known for its minerals and gemstones?
Well, maybe I should say the book, when we talk about Southern Africa, Strike, who are the publishers, include South Africa, Namibia, Botswana, Lesotho, Eswatini, Zimbabwe, and southern end of Mozambique. But South Africa has got world-famous geology, and that links to the minerals and the gemstones. You know, in the Barberton area in Mpumalanga, we've got some of the oldest rocks known on Earth.
Oh, wow.
And there are often researchers and academics from overseas who come to actually study those rocks. If we look at the Witwatersrand gold field, it's the biggest deposit of gold on Earth. That small deposit, what's called the gold field, which goes from Welkom in the south to Evander in the east, has produced over 55,000 tons of gold, 10 times more than all the gold in the world ever.
Wow.
We've got the biggest deposits of manganese on Earth in the world, north of Kuruman in the Kalahari manganese field. We've got the Bushveld complex, north of Pretoria, which has got huge deposits of chrome and platinum. So South Africa, and not to mention, and not to forget actually diamonds, and including there is Botswana and also Lesotho. So we've got not maybe unique geology, but very, very interesting geology. And a lot of the rocks are extremely old, and they contain a lot of these deposits that produce the minerals and the gemstones.
Prof, I just want to ask you, on the bottom left of the screen, which I'm presuming is your right, there's a rock at the back there. Can you tell us about it in your office? I'm saying behind you, there's a rock. Can you tell us about it? Bottom right.
That one?
Yes.
Oh.
Is it valuable?
It's a quartz crystal. Okay.
Wow.
And actually, I got it from my father-in-law. It's not very valuable because it's a bit damaged. It's a bit chipped and broken. And like any collectible, you know, if you collect stamps, if the stamp is torn, then the value, the financial value drops a lot. So it's just a nice, attractive variety of quartz. But still, it's a nice, and it comes from the Northern Cape, from the copper mines north of Springbok at Nababib.
Interesting. It's beautiful.
Wow. Professor, once again, this might be a silly question, but if I want to trade in gemstones or minerals, is it as simple as me literally picking something up when I go for a walk? Or if I want to sell it, do I need a special license for it?
There's a long and a short answer to that. And some things you need a special license for. You are not allowed by law in South Africa to deal in unworked diamonds, in other words, rough diamonds, or in fact gold. They are protected by acts of parliament. But you don't need a permit or a license to collect other, let's say, common type of minerals. Or if you're at a show, as I said, and there are actually not many shows, if any, in South Africa, but overseas there are huge international shows in Tucson, Arizona, in America, and in Germany, where hundreds of dealers from all over the world come, and you can buy a small quartz crystal for maybe $2. You know, it can be cheap. Or you can buy a tourmaline that you can cut into gemstones at maybe millions of dollars. So the big collectors spend a lot of money on their collections, but you don't have to have a lot of money. But yeah, so there's no real law that prohibits you from collecting minerals. That's why, as I say, we have these amateur clubs.
Yeah.
In South Africa.
Absolutely. Now, in 2013, the International Mineralogical Association approved the name, and I hope I say it correctly, the Cairncross site for a new mineral species discovered. That was discovered by you, of course, and it was such an honor. It was named after you. Can you tell us a little bit about that discovery and that honor?
I'm impressed. You've done some research. There's an interesting story. Look, I've worked a lot on the minerals of the Kalahari manganese field with my colleagues, Professor Nick Bierkes, for example, also at UJ, for many years. And we've written a couple of books on the Kalahari manganese field and their minerals. So he and I are sort of quite well known, let's say.
Yes.
But a friend of mine, and he is actually a medical doctor. He lives in Kimberley, Dr. von Betzing. He collects and has collected minerals like me for many, many years, and he specializes in the Kalahari manganese field. And several years ago, he got permission from the Hotters Hell mine north of Kuruman in the Kalahari manganese field to go and have a look on the old dumps to hunt around for some minerals. And he found an interesting whitish type of a mineral that he thought looked a bit different. And he took it home And he says, I don't recognize what this is. And he sent it overseas to researchers to analyze it. And it turned out to be a new species of mineral.
Wow.
Now, minerals are named like other things, like plants and animals. So they analyzed it. It was new. And then the association that names minerals, the IMA, asked the researchers, what do you want to name it? They can choose. And they decided, they asked me, could they name it after me, because I'd done work in the Kalahari. And that's how they named it Cairncross site. And the funny coincidence is there's another mineral known for a long time, which is called brucite. So there's a brucite and there's a Cairncross site, but the other one isn't my name.
I mean, that's fantastic. It's such an honor. How often do you still discover new minerals and gemstones?
Often. Every year, new minerals are discovered. And in fact, the IMA, International Mineralogical Association, publish a list. I think it might be quarterly, where they have new minerals. At the moment, there are 5,814 known species in the world. Many of these are tiny, they are microscopic. And actually, there are a group of researchers in the world who specialize in trying to find these things, and they're quite competitive, actually. So new minerals are continually being found and discovered.
That's incredible. If one is interested in minerals and gemstones, where can you go to see some and learn more about it?
There are museums around the country. In fact, in where you are in Pretoria, the Ditsong Museum, which is downtown, what used to be called the Old Transvaal Museum, has got a really good display of not just of the minerals, but also rocks and meteorites. There's the National Museum in Cape Town. There's a museum here in Johannesburg. So those are, the public, let's say, areas that you can go to. There is a federation that oversees the local gem and mineral clubs, of which there are 8, and they have a website.
Yes.
It's called Fossagams, FOSAGAMS.COZA, I think. And that's got information if people are interested. If they just Google Fossagams, they'd be able to get information online.
Wow. That's incredible. Professor, it's been such an honor to talk to you this morning about minerals and gemstones. And thank you very much for sharing this book, Minerals and Gemstones of Southern Africa. It has been very interesting. I mean, I can speak for hours still more about this specifically. So thank you very much for joining us this morning. We appreciate your time.
Thanks very much. It's been a pleasure and a privilege. Thank you.